Imagine all the usual relationship challenges, but add one tiny detail. Your partner is a centuries-old vampire.
Yeah.
That kind of changes things. This is the story of Cassidy Whitmore, a completely ordinary barista from Portland, and her absolutely extraordinary boyfriend, Lucien Ashford Crane, a 347-year-old vampire with impeccable fashion sense, questionable cooking skills, and zero understanding of modern technology. This is their survival manual. This is their chaotic, beautiful, absurd love story. Cassidy should have known something was off when Lucien suggested they meet at midnight. Not late evening. Midnight. Specifically midnight. It's when the city looks most beautiful, he texted, which Cassidy had found charming in a mysterious, potentially serial killer kind of way. But his profile picture showed a devastatingly handsome man with dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that seemed to look directly into her soul, so she'd agreed. The restaurant he chose was called Sangre de Vida, which Cassidy's high school Spanish translated to something about blood and life. Red flags? Maybe. But the Yelp reviews were incredible. Lucien was already waiting at the table when she arrived, standing the moment he saw her with a kind of old-fashioned courtesy that made her heart skip. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than her car. "Cassidy," he said, taking her hand and kissing it. Actually kissing it. "You look radiant." First absurd situation. He meant it literally. The candlelight reflecting off her skin genuinely seemed to mesmerize him. She caught him staring at her neck approximately 14 times during the appetizers. "So, Lucien," Cassidy said, trying to ignore how he hadn't touched his food, "what do you do for a living?" "I'm in acquisitions," he said vaguely. "Art, mostly. Historical pieces." "That's cool. Like, you work for a museum." "Something like that. I've collected quite a few pieces over the years. Centuries, really. I mean," he coughed, "it feels like centuries in this business." Cassidy laughed. "I know the feeling. Some days at the coffee shop feel like they last forever." Lucien's expression turned wistful. "Yes, forever. Quite." The waiter arrived with their entrees. Cassidy had ordered the steak, medium rare. Lucien had ordered the steak, as rare as legally possible, preferably still moving. The waiter had laughed. Lucien hadn't. Second absurd situation. Watching Lucien eat was an experience. He approached the barely cooked meat with an intensity that was either incredibly attractive or deeply concerning. Possibly both. "So," Cassidy ventured, "any deal-breakers I should know about? Exes who might murder me in my sleep." Lucien paused mid-bite. "Well, there was Evangeline Thorne Blackwater in 1823, but she's been dead for," another cough. "Our relationship has been dead for many years. Very dead. Completely deceased, that relationship." "Right," Cassidy said slowly. 1823 is a very specific year to remember. I'm good with dates. Third absurd situation. When the bill came, Lucien paid with a credit card that had no expiration date. Just blank. When Cassidy pointed this out, he said, "Oh, it's a special membership. Very exclusive. You have to be practically immortal to qualify." Then he laughed like he'd made a hilarious joke. The evening ended with him walking her to her car, refusing to let her walk alone in the dangerous night, despite the fact that the parking lot was well lit and full of people. "I had a wonderful time," he said, and something in his eyes looked ancient and sincere. "Might I see you again? Perhaps during the day." He said this last part like he was testing the words. "You mean you actually go out in daylight?" Cassidy teased. Lucien's laugh sounded slightly panicked. "Of course. I'm not a vampire." Cassidy hadn't said anything about vampires. I mean, obviously, who would think that? "Not me. I'm very human. So human. The most human." "Okay, weirdo," Cassidy grinned. "Yes, I'd love to see you again." He kissed her hand once more, and Cassidy could have sworn his lips were cold as ice. 3 months into dating, Lucien finally invited Cassidy to meet his family. She was nervous, obviously. Meeting the parents is always terrifying. Meeting the parents who live in a literal Gothic mansion on the outskirts of town? Exponentially more terrifying. The Ashford Crane estate looked like something out of a horror movie. Gargoyles, wrought iron gates, the works. A butler actually answered the door. An actual butler named Worthington who spoke like he'd stepped out of a Victorian novel. "Miss Whitmore," Worthington intoned. "The family is expecting you. Do come in." The foyer had portraits lining the walls. Really old portraits. Cassidy noticed one dated 1742 featuring a man who looked suspiciously like Lucien. "That's, my great-great-great-grandfather," Lucien said quickly. "We have strong genes. Very strong. Incredibly strong genes." First absurd situation. Lucien's mother, Cordelia Ashford Crane née Nightshade, was the most elegant woman Cassidy had ever seen. She wore a floor-length burgundy gown, had perfect posture, and didn't blink nearly enough. "Cassidy, darling," Cordelia said, taking both her hands. "How lovely to finally meet you. You have such a vibrant life force." Thank you. I mean, personality. Such a vibrant personality." Lucien's father, Dimitri Ashford Crane, was equally intimidating. Tall, imposing, with a thick accent that seemed to come from several different countries at once. "So," Dimitri said as they sat for dinner, "you are the girl who has captured my son's heart. Tell me, what are your thoughts on eternity?" I'm sorry. Commitment." Lucien interjected loudly. "He's asking about commitment. Dad's very old-fashioned about relationships. Like, really old-fashioned. Medieval, even. 17th century, actually," Dimitri muttered, earning a sharp look from Cordelia. Second absurd situation. Dinner was complicated. The family had prepared two completely different meals. One for Cassidy that looked delicious and normal. One for everyone else that appeared to be various preparations of extremely rare meat and something that looked suspiciously like blood sausage. "We're on a very specific diet," Cordelia explained. "Palea. Very palea. Practically prehistoric." Lucien's sister, Serafina Ashford Crane, was the worst at pretending to be normal. She was around Cassidy's age and appearance, but had an otherworldly quality that was hard to define. "I love your necklace," Cassidy said, trying to make conversation. "Thank you. It's a family heirloom. Been in the family since the Crusades," Serafina said cheerfully. "Wow, that's..." "She means the Crusades-themed party we went to." Lucien interrupted. "Remember, Sarah? That theme party? Recently." "Oh right, yes, the party from 1191. I mean 2019. The party from 2019. Third absurd situation. After dinner, Cordelia pulled Cassidy aside for girl talk. "I must ask, dear, has Lucien told you about our family condition?" Cassidy's heart raced. "Condition?" "We're all terribly allergic to garlic. Deathly allergic. And we have a rare skin condition that makes us very sensitive to sunlight. And we have an iron deficiency that requires a very specific diet. And we're all very long-lived. My mother-in-law is 412. I mean, she feels like she's 412. She's actually 72. That's a lot of conditions." "Genetic," Cordelia said seriously. "Very genetic. It runs in the family. Has for centuries. I mean, generations. Normal human generations." By the time Lucien drove her home, Cassidy was 87% sure she was dating a vampire. But he was sweet, thoughtful, and made her laugh. So, vampire or not, she was willing to see where this went. Cassidy decided to cook dinner for Lucien at her apartment. She'd been planning it for weeks, researching recipes, practicing her techniques. She wanted everything to be perfect. She'd chosen Italian. Homemade pasta, fresh sauce, garlic bread. So much garlic bread. First absurd situation. Lucien arrived looking nervous, carrying flowers, black roses, naturally, and a bottle of wine from a year that seemed improbable, 1887, the label read. "This wine is older than my grandmother," Cassidy joked. Is she very young? Lucien asked hopefully. The moment Lucien stepped inside, his nose wrinkled. What's that smell? Garlic. I know how to properly cook now. Learned that you need to really load up on garlic for authentic Italian flavor. The color drained from Lucien's already pale face. How much garlic? Like 15 cloves? 20. I lost count. Lucien swayed slightly. That's wonderful. I love garlic. Second absurd situation. Dinner was a catastrophe. Lucien tried. He really, genuinely tried. He took one bite of the garlic bread and immediately broke out in hives. Actual hives, spreading across his skin like he was having an allergic reaction. Oh my God! Cassidy rushed to his side. Are you okay? Fine. Lucien gasped, his voice strained. Totally fine. Just so much flavor. Too much flavor for my delicate palate. I'm calling 911. No. He grabbed her hand with surprising strength. Please, no hospitals. I need to step outside. Fresh air. Yes. Air that's not 70% garlic. He practically ran to her balcony, gulping down the night air like a drowning man. Cassidy stood in her kitchen, staring at the elaborate meal she'd prepared, feeling terrible. She grabbed some Benadryl and water and joined him outside. I'm so sorry, she said. Your mom mentioned the garlic allergy, but I didn't think it was this serious. Lucien, looking slightly less like he was dying, managed a weak smile. It's quite serious. Family curse, really. I mean, allergy. Family allergy. Third absurd situation. They ended up ordering pizza, no garlic, extra everything else, and eating it on her balcony under the stars. Lucien seemed to come alive in the moonlight, his color returning, his energy restored. I should have told you sooner, he said softly, about all my peculiarities. Everyone has quirks, Cassidy said. Yours are just more extreme than most. You have no idea, Lucien muttered. So let me get this straight, Cassidy said, deciding to just go for it. You're allergic to garlic. You can't be in direct sunlight. You only eat extremely rare meat. You're incredibly strong. You don't age. You have family heirlooms from the actual Crusades. And you paid for dinner with a credit card that has no expiration date. Lucien was very quiet. Are you a vampire? Cassidy asked. The silence stretched out. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howled. Would that be a deal-breaker? Lucien finally asked, his voice small and vulnerable in a way she'd never heard. Cassidy thought about it. Really thought about it. About the way he made her feel safe. The way he listened when she talked about her dreams. The way he'd memorized her coffee order and her favorite songs and the names of all her friends. I'm dating a literal vampire, she said slowly, and my biggest complaint is that I can't cook Italian food anymore. Lucien's laugh was relieved and delighted. There are substitutes. Garlic powder is less potent. And I'm told elephant garlic is tolerable in small doses. This is insane. Completely insane, he agreed. I'm still making you try my cooking. I wouldn't have it any other way. They kissed under the moonlight, and Cassidy tried very hard not to think about the fact that his lips were cold and he definitely didn't have a heartbeat. Dating a vampire meant making certain accommodations. Cassidy learned this quickly. Their date schedule had to revolve entirely around sunset. Beach trips required an umbrella the size of a small car. And summer was a nightmare. First absurd situation. Their first attempted beach date was legendary in its failure. Lucien showed up covered head to toe in protective clothing. Wide-brimmed hat, long sleeves, gloves, sunglasses, and what appeared to be SPF 10,000 sunscreen. Cassidy didn't know they made SPF 10,000. You look like you're going to a beekeeper convention, Cassidy said. I'm very serious about skin protection, Lucien replied, his voice muffled through the scarf wrapped around his face. They lasted approximately 47 minutes before Lucien started smoking. Not metaphorically. Literally smoking. Small wisps of smoke were rising from his exposed wrists. "Lucien, you're on fire." "It's fine. This is normal. Just a bit of sun sensitivity." They spent the rest of the day in a beachside cave, which Lucien insisted was romantic in a Gothic sort of way. Second absurd situation. Morning routines became complicated. Cassidy was a morning person. Lucien was violently not a morning person, mostly because morning meant sunlight, and sunlight meant pain. She'd wake up at 7 a.m., sunlight streaming through her windows, ready to start the day. Lucien would be hiding under approximately 17 blankets, hissing like an angry cat every time she opened the curtains. "Just 5 more hours," he'd groan. "It's 7 a.m. "Exactly. 5 more hours until noon. 5 more hours until the sun is at its most dangerous peak, and I can sleep knowing I've avoided it." That's not how sleep works. It's how vampire sleep works. They eventually compromised. Blackout curtains for the bedroom, and Cassidy would have her morning coffee on the balcony while Lucien slept. When he finally emerged around 2 p.m., they'd have breakfast together, coffee for her, blood orange juice for him, and yes, he insisted on specifically blood oranges. Third absurd situation. The absolute worst was when Cassidy's friend, Marley Cho, invited them to her outdoor afternoon wedding. In July. At 2 p.m. Lucien stared at the invitation like it was a death sentence. "This is scheduled for peak sun." "I know. Can you make it?" He looked genuinely distressed. "I want to be there for you. I know Marley is important to you." They spent 3 weeks planning his survival strategy. Industrial-strength sunscreen, applied every 30 minutes. A custom suit with UV-protective fabric. A hat so wide-brimmed it qualified as a portable shade structure. And a medical condition that meant he needed to stay in the shade. At the wedding, Lucien spent the entire ceremony standing under a tree at the very back, looking like a mysterious, well-dressed shadow creature. During the reception, he managed exactly 1 dance with Cassidy in the open air before his skin started turning an alarming shade of red. "Your boyfriend is really serious about sun protection," Marley commented, watching Lucien dive back under his protective tent. "You have no idea," Cassidy sighed. But that night, after the sun had set, Lucien took her to the empty wedding venue and they danced alone under the stars, and it was perfect. 4 months into the relationship, Cassidy decided she could handle knowing the truth. The whole truth. Which meant confronting the one question she'd been avoiding. What exactly did Lucien eat? First absurd situation. She found the mini-fridge in his apartment. The one he'd told her was for special dietary supplements. It was full of blood bags. Medical blood bags. With hospital labels and everything. Lucien Ashford Crane. He appeared instantly, moving with that supernatural speed she'd been pretending not to notice. "I can explain. You're stealing blood from hospitals?" "No. No. I have a supplier. Very legitimate. His name is Gerald Mortensen. He works at the blood bank, and he provides expired blood that would otherwise be discarded. I'm basically recycling." "You're recycling blood?" "When you say it like that, it sounds weird." "It is weird." Second absurd situation. Lucien sat her down for the talk. The vampire dietary requirements talk. "I need blood to survive," he explained, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "But I haven't fed from a human in over a century. I made a choice. Bag blood only. It's ethically sourced, medically safe, and no one gets hurt." "Over a century?" Cassidy asked. "Yes. I fed from humans during my early years, but I hated it. The invasion, the violence of it, even when consensual. So I stopped. 1924, I stopped. Found alternatives." "That's actually kind of noble." "I'm trying to be better than my nature dictates," Lucien said softly. "Isn't that what we all do?" Cassidy processed this. Her boyfriend was a vampire who drank ethically sourced blood bank donations and felt guilty about his dietary requirements. Somehow, this was her life now. Third absurd situation. She asked to meet Gerald Mortensen, the blood supplier, because apparently that's a thing you do when you date vampires, vet their blood sources. Gerald turned out to be a cheerful man in his 50s who treated vampire blood supply like a legitimate business. "Oh, you must be Cassidy." Gerald shook her hand enthusiastically. "Lucien talks about you constantly. Did you know he special ordered AB negative for your first anniversary dinner? Very romantic, the AB negative." "I did not know that. Top shelf stuff." I told him, "Lucien, you're spoiling yourself," but he insisted. "Only the best for special occasions." They were discussing blood like it was wine. This was Cassidy's life now. Gerald showed her the operation, all legitimate, all expired medical donations that couldn't be used for transfusions, all properly stored and handled. "I've been supplying the vampire community for 30 years, Gerald said proudly. "Someone's got to help them stay ethical. Otherwise, who knows what might happen." "The vampire community?" Cassidy asked faintly. "Oh yes. There are dozens in the city alone. Hundreds across the country. Lucien's one of the good ones, though. Very conscientious. Always pays on time. Never complains about the quality." Cassidy left the blood bank feeling like she'd fallen down a rabbit hole into a world she'd never known existed. A world with vampires and vampire suppliers and apparently vampire ethics. That night, she watched Lucien heat up a blood bag in the microwave, 37 degrees Celsius, exactly body temperature, he was very particular, and pour it into a wine glass. "Still weird?" he asked. "Extremely weird," she confirmed. "But I'm dealing with it." He smiled, fangs just slightly visible, and raised his glass. "To dealing with it?" "To dealing with it," she agreed, clinking her wine glass against his blood glass. Lucien Ashford Crane was 347 years old. This meant he had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, survived plagues, and seen the world transform countless times. It also meant he was absolutely, catastrophically terrible with modern technology. First absurd situation. The cell phone incident. Cassidy had bought Lucien a smartphone for his birthday. Vampires celebrated birthdays apparently, though Lucien's was complicated by the fact that he'd been born 3 separate times: human birth, vampire transformation, and legal identity recreation in 1987. "It's simple," she explained. "You just touch the screen." Lucien poked at it like it might explode. "Why is there no keyboard?" "It's a touch screen. The keyboard appears when you need it." "But where are the keys?" "They're virtual." "That's not real then. How can I type on keys that aren't real?" Teaching him to text was a nightmare. His messages read like Victorian letters. "Lucien, dearest Cassidy, I hope this electronic correspondence finds you in good health and spirits. I write to inform you that I shall be arriving approximately 15 minutes hence. Your devoted companion, Lucien Ashford Crane, ESQ. Cassidy. Just say, be there in 15, like a normal person. Lucien. But that lacks proper salutation and closing remarks. Second absurd situation. Social media was even worse. Cassidy's friend, Devin Ramirez Kim, had convinced her to make Lucien an Instagram account. He's hot, mysterious, and well-dressed. He'd kill on Instagram. Lucien's first post was a blurry photo of his ceiling with the caption, "I have successfully activated the camera function. Technology is extraordinary. Yours in the modern age, LAC." His second post was 47 minutes long because he didn't understand that Instagram videos had time limits and tried to record a complete review of a book he'd read. In 1843. His third post was accidentally a live stream of him sitting in complete silence for 23 minutes because he couldn't figure out how to turn it off. "How do people do this?" he asked in despair, staring at his phone like it had personally betrayed him. "Practice," Cassidy said, trying not to laugh. "You've had 347 years to practice lots of things. You can learn this too." "I learned to sword fight. I learned 6 languages. I mastered the harpsichord. But this tiny glowing rectangle defeats me. Third absurd situation. The time he tried to use a self-checkout machine at the grocery store. Cassidy had sent him on a simple errand. Pick up milk and bread. Basic items. He was gone for 2 hours. When he finally returned, empty-handed and looking traumatized, she asked what happened. The machine spoke to me, he said, staring into the distance. It said, unexpected item in bagging area, and I panicked. What item? I had placed the correct item. Why was it unexpected? Who programmed this demon? Did you scan it first? There's a scanning step. They went back to the store together. Cassidy patiently showed him how to scan items, place them in bags, and pay using the card reader. In my day, Lucien muttered, you simply gave your money to a person and they gave you goods. A simple, dignified transaction between humans. You weren't human in your day, Cassidy pointed out. The principle stands. But slowly, gradually, he learned. He started sending her memes, usually about 3 months after they'd stopped being relevant. He figured out how to video call, though he still dressed formally for it, sitting with perfect posture like he was having an audience with royalty. He even started an online book club with other vampires, discussing literature across the centuries. His proudest moment was successfully ordering food delivery through an app. I have summoned sustenance through electronic means, he announced triumphantly when the pizza arrived. You ordered pizza on your phone. Welcome to 2026. The future is magnificent and terrifying in equal measure, he declared. Taking a bite of pepperoni, he discovered that cooked meat was tolerable, if not preferred. Every relationship has X-drama. When you're dating a 347-year-old vampire, the X-drama is proportionally more intense. First absurd situation. Meeting Evangeline Thorne Blackwater. She appeared at Cassidy's coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, looking like she'd stepped out of a Gothic romance novel. Tall, devastatingly beautiful, with dark hair and eyes that had seen centuries. You must be Cassidy, Evangeline said, her accent placing her somewhere in 19th-century British aristocracy. I've heard so much about you. I'm Evangeline, Lucien's ex-wife. Cassidy dropped the cup she was holding. Ex-wife. Oh, he didn't mention that? We were married in 1823. Divorced in 1847. Nasty business. Vampire divorces. Lots of dramatics and thrown silverware. He told me you dated. Darling, we were married for 24 years. Though in vampire terms, that's barely a fling. Second absurd situation. Evangeline had come to evaluate whether Cassidy was good enough for Lucien. Nothing personal, Evangeline said, sipping her black coffee, no cream, no sugar, room temperature. Who drinks room temperature coffee? But Lucien has a tendency to fall for humans, and it always ends in heartbreak. Yours, specifically, when you inevitably age and die. That's dark. That's reality, sweetheart. I was human once too. Got turned in 1821. Best decision I ever made. You should consider it. Consider what? Vampirism. Eternal life. Never having to worry about aging. Plus, the perks are excellent. Superhuman strength, speed, night vision. The only downside is the whole blood drinking thing, but you get used to it. Cassidy felt like her brain was short-circuiting. Are you seriously trying to recruit me into vampirism? I'm offering you options. Look, if you're serious about Lucien, you need to think long-term. And I mean long-term. What's your plan for when you're 70 and he still looks 35? Third absurd situation. Cassidy called Lucien in a panic. Your ex-wife is in my coffee shop trying to turn me into a vampire. There was a crash on the other end of the line, then Lucien's voice, tight with panic. Evangeline is where? My coffee shop. Don't move. Don't agree to anything. Don't let her bite you. I'll be there in 5 minutes. It's 2 p.m. The sun is out. I don't care. He arrived in 4 minutes, covered head to toe in protective gear, smoking slightly, looking absolutely furious. "Evangeline Thorne Blackwater," he said, his voice cold. "We agreed. No contact with my partners. That was the divorce settlement." "Oh, relax, Luce." Evangeline waved a hand dismissively. "I was just having a chat. She's lovely, by the way. Much better than that disaster from 1923. What was her name?" "Millicent." "Marguerite. And you drove her away by constantly appearing in her dreams and threatening her." "I was protecting you. From happiness." Cassidy watched this exchange like a tennis match. Two vampires arguing about relationships from a century ago in the middle of her coffee shop. Her co-worker, Jamie Patel, was recording the whole thing on their phone. Eventually, Evangeline left, but not before giving Cassidy her card. "In case you change your mind about the eternal life thing, the offer stands. Lucien's clearly mad about you, which means you might actually be worth turning." After she left, Lucien sank into a chair, smoking slightly from sun exposure, looking exhausted. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have told you about Evangeline. About the marriage. About all of it. You were married? It was a century and a half ago. It hardly counts. It was a marriage." They had their first real fight. About transparency, about trust, about the complications of dating someone with literal centuries of romantic history. But they worked through it. They talked, really talked, about expectations and honesty and what it meant to blend their vastly different life experiences. "No more surprise ex-wives?" Cassidy asked. "I promise." Although there was a brief engagement in 1776 that didn't work out. "Lucien." "Kidding. Mostly kidding. I'll make you a complete list of all past romantic entanglements. It'll take a while. Maybe several pages." "This is my life now," Cassidy muttered. But she was smiling. 6 months into the relationship, the question neither of them wanted to address finally came up. Cassidy brought it up at 2 a.m., lying in bed, staring at the ceiling while Lucien read a first-edition book from his personal library. "What happens when I get old?" she asked quietly. Lucien's hand stilled on the page. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm going to age. In 20 years, I'll be 46. In 40 years, 66. And you'll still look exactly like this." The silence was heavy. First absurd situation. They had the talk. The mortality talk. The most serious conversation they'd had yet. "I've thought about it," Lucien admitted. "Every day, I think about it. About what it means to love someone mortal. To know that our time is limited. And it terrifies me. I've watched humans age and die for 3 centuries, Cassidy. Friends, acquaintances, people I cared about. But loving you, actually being in love with you, the thought of losing you is—" His voice cracked. Cassidy sat up. "Evangeline offered to turn me." "Absolutely not." His response was immediate and firm. "Why not?" "Because vampirism isn't a gift, it's a curse. You don't know what it's like, watching everyone you love die. Being stuck forever in the same body, the same state. Never growing, never changing. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, least of all you. But we could be together. Forever. You'd hate it. Eventually. They all do. The ones who choose immortality for love always regret it." Second absurd situation. They started researching alternatives. Because apparently, in the supernatural world, there were options. Lucien's friend, Mordecai Sylvester von Roth, a 500-year-old vampire with a Ph.D. in supernatural biology, explained the possibilities over dinner. "There's the traditional turning, of course," Mordecai said, gesturing with a blood-filled wine glass. "But Lucien's right to be cautious. The psychological impact of immortality is severe. Depression rates among turned humans are astronomical." "What else?" Cassidy asked. "Life extension spells. Less commitment than full vampirism, but also less permanent. You'd need regular renewals. There's also the age-slowing potion route, but those taste absolutely vile. Or there's the Dorian Gray method, though that requires some morally questionable portrait work. This is insane, Cassidy muttered. This is the supernatural world, dear, Mordecai smiled. Normal went out the window the moment you fell for a vampire. Third absurd situation. They decided to consult an expert. A witch named Rowena Blackthornsage who specialized in life magic and temporal manipulation. Rowena's shop was in the back of a botanical garden, hidden behind ivy and protected by wards that made Cassidy's teeth ache. So, Rowena said, studying them both with unervingly bright green eyes. Human girl in love with vampire boy. A tale as old as time. What are we thinking? Full conversion? Life extension? Time dilation? We don't know, Cassidy admitted. That's why we're here. Rowena nodded. Smart. Too many couples rush into eternity without thinking it through. Here's my professional opinion. Wait. Wait. Lucien repeated. You've been together 6 months. That's nothing. Give it a few years. Live your human life, Cassidy. Have experiences, grow, change. If, after 5 years, you still want to spend eternity with Mr. Broody here, come back. I'll help you then. 5 years. Cassidy felt relief and disappointment in equal measure. 5 human years is a good test, Rowena said gently. Long enough to know if this is real. Short enough that you're still young enough to make the transition if you choose to. And Lucien, she fixed him with a stern look. You need to be okay with her choice, whatever it is. If she chooses mortality, you don't get to guilt her about it. Walking home, they held hands in silence. 5 years, Cassidy finally said. 5 years, Lucien agreed. And whatever you decide at the end of it, I'll respect it. Even if you choose to stay human. Even if that means you'll eventually lose me? He pulled her close. I'd rather have 50 years with you as you are than an eternity with someone you're not. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her. Even if it made her cry. Cassidy had assumed Lucien was unique. A solitary vampire living among humans. She was spectacularly wrong. First absurd situation. The Vampire Social Club. Lucien finally invited her to the monthly gathering of the Pacific Northwest Vampire Alliance, a support group for vampires trying to live ethically among humans. It's not a cult, he assured her as they walked into an upscale community center at 11 p.m. That's exactly what someone in a cult would say. The meeting room was full of extraordinarily beautiful people of various ages, all looking slightly uncomfortable under the fluorescent lights. A cheerful vampire named Harriet Pembroke Lancaster, turned in 1952, still dressed like she was going to a sock hop, welcomed them enthusiastically. You must be Cassidy. We've heard so much about you. Lucien never stops talking about you at meetings. He talks about me at Vampire Support Group. Oh honey, he's obsessed. Last week he spent 20 minutes describing the way you laugh. It was adorable. Also slightly concerning. The meeting began with everyone sitting in a circle, introducing themselves and sharing their struggles. Hi, I'm Marcus Flint Hawthorne. I've been a vampire for 89 years, and this week I accidentally scared a Girl Scout who came to my door selling cookies. Hi, I'm Veronica Ashwoodchin, 156 years undead, and I'm struggling with the fact that all my favorite foods for my human life no longer exist. Hi, I'm Theodore Blackwell III, 423 years old, and I still can't figure out how TikTok works. Second absurd situation. They had a newcomer. A recently turned vampire named Jason Kowalski who was having a crisis. I can't do this. Jason was pacing, running his hands through his hair. I've been a vampire for 3 months and I hate everything about it. I miss pizza. I miss the sun. I miss not having to explain to my family why I can't come to Sunday brunch. The group rallied around him with support and advice. It gets easier, Mordecai said gently. The first year is always the hardest. You can still have garlic-free pizza, Harriet offered. It's not the same, but it's something. And there are UV-filtered sunrooms, Lucien added. Expensive, but worth it. Cassidy watched her boyfriend console a crying vampire about missing breadsticks and had to suppress hysterical laughter. This was so far from her normal life it was absurd. Third absurd situation. After the meeting, there was a social hour. With refreshments. Vampire refreshments. A table was set up with various blood types in labeled dispensers, like a macabre beverage station. We have O positive, AB negative, and a special batch of B positive that Gerald said pairs well with. Harriet checked her notes. Contemplative evenings and jazz music. He's describing blood like it's wine, Cassidy whispered to Lucien. Wait until you see the blood sommelier certification course. It's an actual thing. A vampire named Sebastian Thorne Ashcroft approached them, holding 2 glasses of dark liquid. You must be the famous Cassidy. I'm Sebastian. I've been tracking your relationship with great interest. That's slightly creepy. I'm a relationship counselor. 4 human vampire couples. It's my specialty. He handed her a business card. When you two inevitably hit your 1-year crisis, and you will, give me a call. 1-year crisis? Oh yes. It's when the reality of the situation truly sets in. The mortality question, the lifestyle differences, the fact that he'll never truly understand TikTok trends. It's a difficult time. Speaking from experience? Cassidy asked. Sebastian's face fell. My wife chose mortality. We had 40 beautiful years together. She passed last spring. His smile was sad. Best 40 years of my 5-century existence. Cassidy felt a lump in her throat. I'm so sorry. Don't be. She lived fully, beautifully, humanly. And I was privileged to witness it. He squeezed her shoulder. Whatever you choose, make it your choice. Not his, not fear's, not society's. Yours. Driving home, Cassidy was quiet. That was a lot, Lucien said. Your vampire support group is weirdly wholesome. We try. Centuries of existence require strong community bonds. Otherwise, you go mad. Or become a villain. One or the other. Sebastian seems nice. Sad but nice. He's one of the good ones. Lost his wife, but still believes in human-vampire relationships. That takes courage. Cassidy looked at Lucien's profile in the darkness of the car. Are we going to be okay? I don't know, he said honestly. But I'm willing to try if you are. I am. Then we'll figure it out. One absurd situation at a time. First absurd situation. Thanksgiving at Cassidy's parents' house. Cassidy had been dreading this. Introducing Lucien to her extremely normal, extremely human family. Her mother, Patricia Whitmore, was already suspicious. He can't come to Thanksgiving dinner during the day? Patricia had asked on the phone. He has a medical condition, Mom. Sun sensitivity. What kind of medical condition requires avoiding the sun entirely? A serious one. Lucien arrived at 5 p.m. after sunset, looking impeccable in a sweater that probably cost more than Cassidy's car. He brought wine, from 1947, because he couldn't help himself, and flowers for Patricia. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, shaking her hand with old-fashioned courtesy. Thank you for having me in your lovely home. Patricia was charmed despite herself. Well, you certainly have manners. Cassidy's last boyfriend ate directly off the serving platter. Cassidy's father, Robert Whitmore, was less easily won over. So, Lucien, what do you do? I'm an art acquisition specialist and historical consultant. Sounds made up. Dad. What? I'm just saying, back in my day, people had real jobs. Plumber. Electrician. Accountant. I assure you, my work is quite real. I've been doing it for, Lucien caught himself, for many years. Feels like centuries. Second absurd situation. Dinner itself was a minefield. The turkey was cooked perfectly. The stuffing had garlic. Of course it did. Lucien turned pale, paler than usual. "Mrs. Whitmore, did you mention what's in the stuffing?" "Oh, the usual. Bread, celery, onions, and lots of garlic. It's my secret ingredient." Lucien looked at Cassidy with pure panic. "Mom, remember I told you about Lucien's severe garlic allergy?" "Oh, I thought you were exaggerating. People are so dramatic about food these days. In my day, we ate what we were served." Lucien gamely tried to eat around the garlic-contaminated items, but everything had touched everything else. He mostly pushed food around his plate while complimenting Patricia's cooking profusely. "You're not eating much," Robert observed suspiciously. "I had a large lunch. Very large. Extremely filling." "At lunch? I thought you couldn't go out during the day." "I meant dinner. I had dinner. For lunch. I mean..." Lucien was floundering. Cassidy's younger sister, Emma Whitmore, was watching this exchange with barely concealed amusement. At 19, she was home from college and finding the whole situation hilarious. "So, Lucien," Emma said innocently, "what's your skincare routine?" "Your skin is flawless. Like, unnaturally flawless. Good genes. And I avoid the sun religiously." "Clearly. Do you sparkle in sunlight?" Lucien choked on his water. "Excuse me. You know, like in Twilight?" "I can assure you, I do not sparkle. I smoke slightly and experience excruciating pain, but no sparkling." The table went silent. "That was a joke," Lucien added quickly. "About the smoking and pain. The not sparkling part is true. Because I'm human. A regular human who doesn't sparkle." Third absurd situation. After dinner, Robert cornered Lucien in the kitchen. "I'm going to be straight with you, son. What are your intentions with my daughter?" Lucien looked genuinely touched by the old-fashioned question. "Sir, I love Cassidy more than I've loved anyone in..." He stopped himself again. "In my entire life. She's extraordinary. And I intend to treat her with the respect and care she deserves for as long as she'll have me." "That's a good answer. But you're hiding something. I can tell. Everyone has secrets, Mr. Whitmore." "True enough. But if you hurt her, whatever you are or aren't, I'll find a way to hurt you back." "Understood. Completely understood. And for what it's worth, the only thing I'm afraid of in this world is losing her." Robert studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right then. But seriously, what's with the 1947 wine? That bottle's probably worth thousands. I have a well-stocked wine cellar." Clearly. By the end of the night, Patricia was teaching Lucien family recipes, garlic-free modifications included. Emma was trying to get him to join TikTok, and even Robert had warmed up slightly. In the car on the way home, Cassidy laughed until she cried. "Your father threatened to hurt me if I hurt you," Lucien said, sounding oddly pleased. "He's protective. It's admirable. Also terrifying. I think he could actually do it. He's a retired Marine. He definitely could. I like him. I like your whole family. Even if your mother tried to poison me with garlic." "She didn't try to poison you." Intent is irrelevant when the result is the same. Cassidy's barista job was fine, but it wasn't a career. At 26, she was starting to think about her future, which led to an interesting conversation with her vampire boyfriend. First absurd situation. Career counseling with someone who'd had 17 different careers across 3 centuries. "What do you actually want to do?" Lucien asked, genuinely interested. "I don't know. I studied English literature in college, but that doesn't exactly translate to obvious career paths." "I could hire you." "As what?" "My assistant. I need help cataloging my art collection, and my book collection, and my various historical documents. It's overwhelming." "You want me to be your employee?" "I want you to do work you find interesting while being compensated fairly. The employee-employer relationship is secondary." Cassidy considered this. "Wouldn't that be weird? Dating my boss?" Technically, you'd be dating someone who lived through the Renaissance, survived the Black Plague, and once met Lord Byron at a party. The boss-employee dynamic is the least weird thing about our relationship. He had a point. Second absurd situation. Lucien's home office turned out to be a warehouse-sized personal archive. This is your collection? Cassidy stared in awe at rows upon rows of art, books, and artifacts. This is one of my collections. I have 3 more locations. Lucien. I've been alive for 347 years. Things accumulate. I can't just throw away a first-edition Shakespeare or a painting by an obscure Renaissance master who was my drinking buddy. You had drinking buddies in the Renaissance? Well, I drank wine and watched them get drunk. But yes. Cassidy spent her first day just trying to understand the organizational system. There wasn't one. Lucien had items organized by when I acquired it, and things that remind me of France, and possibly cursed objects, do not touch. This is a nightmare, Cassidy said, staring at a box labeled 1800s miscellaneous. Some might be important? This is job security, Lucien countered. Third absurd situation. One of Lucien's possibly cursed objects was definitely cursed. Cassidy had been cataloging items for 3 weeks when she opened a box containing an ornate mirror. The moment she looked into it, the reflection showed her aging rapidly. 20 years, 40 years, 60 years flashing by. Lucien. He appeared instantly, saw the mirror, and slammed the box shut. I told you not to touch the possibly cursed items. I thought you were exaggerating. Cassidy. I'm 347 years old. When I say something might be cursed, believe me. What was that? The mirror of mortality. Shows humans their eventual death. Shows vampires nothing, which is arguably worse. I confiscated it from a dark magic dealer in 1923. And you kept it? I couldn't let it circulate. People were using it to terrify their enemies. So you put it in a box labeled, possibly cursed. In my defense, there are several possibly cursed items. It's hard to keep track. They spent the next week properly documenting and securing all dangerous magical items, a process that revealed Lucien had been horrifyingly casual about supernatural safety. Is this a genuine monkey's paw? Cassidy held up a desiccated paw. Oh yes. Grants 3 wishes. All of them terrible. I used 1 wish in 1887 and regretted it immediately. What did you wish for? Fashionable facial hair. It worked, but I couldn't grow it in new styles for 50 years. Fashion moved on. I looked ridiculous. Cassidy stared at him. You wasted a magic wish on beard styles. I was young and vain. It was a dark time. Working together, they slowly brought order to centuries of chaos. Cassidy discovered she had a talent for archival work and research. Lucien discovered he enjoyed having someone to share his collection with. You're really good at this, he said one evening, watching her create a detailed database. Thanks. It's actually fun. Like solving a giant historical puzzle. You're not upset about dating your boss? You're not really my boss. You're my vampire boyfriend with hoarding tendencies who's paying me to organize his life. That's surprisingly accurate. Sebastian had been right. The 1-year mark was hard. First absurd situation. Planning an anniversary celebration when one person can't go out during the day. Most couples do romantic daytime activities, Cassidy said, scrolling through anniversary ideas on her phone. Picnics, beach trips, hiking. We could do all of those things at night, Lucien offered. Night picnic, night beach, night hiking. Do you hear how absurd that sounds? I've been doing night activities for 3 centuries. They're quite lovely once you adjust. They compromised. A sunset dinner at an upscale restaurant with a spectacular view, timed precisely so they could watch the sun set together before full darkness. Lucien showed up in a suit that made Cassidy's heart skip. She wore the dress he'd bought her for her birthday. He had impeccable taste, probably from centuries of fashion experience. You look absolutely radiant, he said, and meant it literally again. "You look dead sexy," she replied, then winced. "Sorry. Poor word choice. I'll allow it." Second absurd situation. The restaurant was perfect. The food was incredible. And then Cassidy saw a familiar face across the room. Evangeline Thorne Blackwater, with a date. "Is that your ex-wife on a date?" Cassidy hissed. Lucien turned, froze, then turned back. "Yes. That's Evangeline. And her date appears to be Reginald Thornbury Black. Interesting. I thought he was still in Europe. Should we leave?" "Absolutely not. This is our anniversary. She doesn't get to ruin it." But Evangeline, naturally, came over. "Lucien. Cassidy. What a coincidence." She was all smiles, her date trailing behind, looking confused. 1 year already? How time flies. Feels like just yesterday Lucien and I were celebrating our first anniversary. "Where was that, Luce?" "Prague." "Vienna," Lucien said tightly. 1824. 200 years ago, Cassidy pointed out. Ancient history. "Quite literally," Evangeline laughed. "Well, enjoy your evening. Let's hope you two fare better than we did." After she left, Cassidy felt the weight of time pressing down. 1 year for them. One of hundreds of years for Lucien. A tiny blip in his long existence. "Hey!" Lucien reached across the table, taking her hand. "Don't let her get in your head. Hard not to. She represents your past. Centuries of it. I represent... what? A few decades at most. You represent my present. My happiness. My hope for the future, however long or short it may be." Third absurd situation. After dinner, Lucien took her to a private rooftop he'd rented for the evening. "I wanted to give you something," he said, pulling out a small box. Cassidy's heart raced. "Lucien." "It's not a ring," he said quickly. "We're not there yet. But it is important." Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a pendant, a tiny hourglass filled with what looked like starlight. "It's a timekeeper's charm," Lucien explained. "Made by Rowena. It won't make you immortal or extend your life. But it will let you live every moment fully. No wasted time, no regrets. Every second you wear it, you'll be completely present." "That's..." Cassidy felt tears building. "That's perfect. I can't give you eternity. I won't ask you to give up your humanity. But I can give you this, the promise that every moment we have together, mortal or otherwise, will matter." She kissed him under the stars, and for that moment, mortality didn't matter at all. 1 year became 2. 2 became 3. Cassidy's life had fully integrated with Lucien's world. First absurd situation. She'd become friends with vampires. Harriet invited her to a book club, Vampire Book Club, where they discussed books from their respective time periods. Mordecai taught her about supernatural politics. Even Evangeline had warmed up to her, occasionally texting restaurant recommendations and backhanded compliments. "You're lasting longer than I expected," Evangeline texted once. Respect. Cassidy's human friends were less understanding. Marley confronted her over coffee. "You're disappearing into his world." "I'm not disappearing. I'm expanding." "You work for him. You hang out with his friends. You've adjusted your entire schedule to his nocturnal lifestyle. When's the last time you did something that was just yours?" It was a fair point. Cassidy had let her old life slip away, piece by piece, replacing it with Lucien's centuries-old existence. Second absurd situation. She started reclaiming her human life. She joined a pottery class. Mornings only, deliberately scheduled when Lucien was asleep. She reconnected with college friends. She started writing again, something she'd abandoned after graduation. Lucien, to his credit, supported this completely. "You need your own life," he said. "I've had 3 centuries to build mine. You deserve the same opportunity. Don't you worry I'll drift away. If being yourself means drifting away, then we were never meant to last." But I don't think that's what's happening. I think you're becoming more yourself, and I'm fortunate enough to witness it. Third absurd situation. They established boundaries. Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Cassidy's time. No vampire business. Sundays. Human friend time. Lucien politely declined invitations. Fridays. Their time. Together, but doing something new, something neither of them had planned. It worked. The space actually brought them closer. I missed you today, Lucien would say after her pottery class. I missed you too. Want to see the very ugly bowl I made? I would be honored. I'll display it prominently in my collection. It's genuinely terrible. Then it will fit right in with some of my impulse purchases from the 1600s. They found their rhythm. Not completely human, not completely vampire, but something uniquely theirs. 5 years arrived faster than Cassidy expected. She was 31 now. Lucien was still 347, still looking 35. They returned to Rowena's shop as promised. Well, well, Rowena said, looking genuinely pleased. You actually made it 5 years. I'm impressed. We had our moments, Cassidy admitted. All couples do. The question now is, what do you want? First absurd situation. Making the choice. Rowena laid out the options again, more detailed this time. Full vampire conversion, eternal life, but you'll lose human experiences. Food tastes like ash, sunlight becomes painful, and you'll watch everyone you know age and die while you remain frozen. Life extension. You'll age, but much slower. About 1 year for every 10. Keeps you human, keeps the experiences, but you'll still outlive friends and family. Remain fully human. You get your natural lifespan, all the human experiences, but Lucien will eventually lose you. There's no perfect option, Cassidy said quietly. There never is. That's life. Or unlife. Or whatever this is. Second absurd situation. Cassidy asked for time alone to think. She spent a day walking through the city, watching humans rush through their short lives. She visited her parents, watched her dad play with Emma's new baby. She met Marley for lunch and laughed at ridiculous things. She called Lucien that night. I've decided. His voice was carefully neutral. Yes. Life extension. The slow aging one. Are you certain? I want more time with you. But I don't want to lose my humanity. I like being human. I like food and sunshine and the way my body changes and grows. I just want more of it. More time, Lucien said softly. More time with you. Is that okay? Cassidy Whitmore, you could choose to live as a sentient piece of cheese and I would support you. Yes, it's more than okay. Third absurd situation. The life extension ritual was surprisingly mundane. Rowena had them sit in a circle, held hands, and chanted for approximately 4 minutes. There was a brief moment where Cassidy felt like every cell in her body was being rewritten, and then it was done. That's it? She asked. What were you expecting? Fireworks? Dramatic lights? Kind of, yeah. Magic is mostly anticlimactic, Rowena said. But effective. You'll age about 1 year for every 10 now. Come back every decade for a renewal. So I'll be. Cassidy did the math. Physically 40 when I'm 90? Roughly. Give or take. Lucien was grinning. We have time. We have time, Cassidy agreed. They left the shop hand in hand, facing a future that was still uncertain but no longer quite so limited. 10 years after that first midnight date, Cassidy and Lucien sat on their apartment balcony, carefully UV protected for his benefit, watching the sunset. We should write that manual, Cassidy said suddenly. What manual? The Vampire Dating Survival Manual. 4 other human vampire couples. Lucien laughed. What would we even include? Oh, I have ideas. They spent the evening creating their list. The Vampire Dating Survival Manual. Essential tips. 1. Always check ingredients for garlic. Seriously. Always. It's not worth the hives. 2. Invest in blackout curtains. Your sleep schedules will never align otherwise. 3. Blood bank suppliers are legitimate businesses. Don't judge. They're doing important work. 4. Technology patience is essential. Your vampire partner learned to write with a quill. Give them time with the smartphone. 5. X-drama is exponentially worse. They've had centuries to accumulate romantic history. Accept it. 6. Establish boundaries early. You need your own life. They've had centuries to build theirs. 7. The mortality question never goes away. Address it honestly and repeatedly. 8. Sun protection is no joke. SPF 10,000 exists for a reason. 9. Find community. Vampire support groups are weird but helpful. 10. Life extension is an option, not an obligation. Choose what's right for you. 11. Love is still love. Immortal or mortal, vampire or human, the important stuff stays the same. Number 11 is the most important, Lucien said. Agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as darkness fell. Any regrets? Lucien asked. Cassidy thought about it. About the garlic-free Italian food, the nocturnal schedule, the absurd situations, the integration into a world she'd never known existed. Not one, she said honestly. You. Only that I didn't meet you sooner. Though I suppose I had to live 347 years to be ready for you. That's extremely sappy. I'm extremely old. I'm allowed to be sappy. She kissed him as the last rays of sunlight disappeared, beginning another night in their beautifully absurd life together. Somewhere in the city, another human was probably going on a first date with a vampire, completely unaware of the chaos that awaited them. But that was okay. Everyone's survival manual looked different. This was theirs. And it was perfect.